Hello, everyone. We will be talking about the SAWGraph project today. SAWGraph is an open knowledge network to monitor and trace PFAS and other contaminants in the nation's food and water system. I'm Torsten Hahmann, an associate professor in spatial computing at the University of Maine and the PI for this project, and I will be giving you a quick overview of what the project is about. So the intent of SAWGraph is to build a geospatial open knowledge network that connects PFAS, so PFAS are contaminants, and other related data sets that are needed to understand PFAS contamination and its impact on water and food supplies. In order to do that, we integrate not just observations from PFAS, like test results about where they occur, what PFAS occurs, and at what levels, but also potential sources of PFAS and potentially impacted features such as wells and agriculture fields. The idea is to kind of use that, integrate this data to facilitate monitoring and tracing of PFAS, but the same approach actually applies to any kind of contaminants of interest. So it's not just limited to monitoring, tracing PFAS, but other contaminants like lead, mercury, bacteria contamination, etc. So if you don't know what PFAS are, these are a group of chemicals, of actually thousands of chemicals, which are organofluorine compounds that are characterized by one or more carbon-fluorine bonds that you see at the top here, like the carbon is the black circles and the fluorine is the green balls there. And these are very strong bonds that offer desired properties such as water and oil repellency, which has kind of led to their use in a lot of consumer products and industrial applications for waterproofing materials or non-stick cookware, for fire retardant foams, and kind of making textiles or like upholstered furniture, stain resistance, having food containers or wrappers like oil resistant, etc. So they're very useful, but the strong bonds that lead to this water and oil repellency also prevent their breakdown in the environment. And in addition, there's a lot of health risks associated with PFAS. Some of the things that have been reported are increased cholesterol levels, decreased vaccine response, changes in liver enzymes, increased risk of various cancers, etc. And this is just a tip of the iceberg, what we know so far. So PFAS can be released via various mechanisms into the environment. For example, when you throw things away, when you wash things like your water repellent clothing or your nonstick pans, PFAS ends up in the environment, or wherever PFAS is produced or handled, it might be released into the air. And through the release into the air or water, it can be cycled within the environment, end up in the soil and food and drinking water. So that's why government partners are really interested in understanding where do we see PFAS in the environment, where it is kind of elevated, and how can we remediate it, or how can we protect our food and water resources. So SAWGraph intends to help guide decision-making and research on PFAS, and we've identified with the stakeholders 3 main use cases. The first one is about testing, like understanding where PFAS has been identified, at what levels, what kind of PFAS. So for example, PFOA is one of the most common ones. PFAS is another common one, but there are many others that are tested for. And then we are interested in the level. For example, are there certain samples above 20 parts per trillion or 4 parts per trillion, or what are the levels that we see? In addition, we want to know like what kind of materials PFAS has been found. Like, is it just in the water, surface water, groundwater, in fish tissue, in soil, or in agricultural products? The second use case is about assessing the impacts, like understanding where there's a higher prevalence of PFAS, who might be most impacted, so that we can kind of direct resources for remediation and mitigation to where it is needed the most. The third use case involves tracing PFAS, like helping understand where PFAS might have come from, so that we can look in other places where there are similar facilities, for example. So do we see higher levels of PFAS downstream from landfills, for example? Or what kind of industrial facilities are upstream from particular elevated sample results? I just want to give you a brief overview of the kind of queries we can run on SAWGraph to support these 3 use cases. So the first example here shows a map where we are looking for samples, which are shown in the orange, like the large orange circles that are near landfills or US national security sites. The landfills are shown in brown and the US national security sites in blue. And so we see in Maine here, where we have a lot of PFAS sample results ingested into the SAWGraph, we find the relevant samples near those sites. The second query shows an example of tracing PFAS along rivers. So here we want to know for particular kind of facilities, for example, paper manufacturing facilities, what is the PFAS concentration downstream of those in both water and in fish samples. So the water samples are the blue circles and the fish samples are light pink and darker pink. The actual facilities we are looking from downstream are shown in red, so red circles. And so this is just an example looking at one type of facilities. You can do this with any kind of facility or industry sectors that you suspect of handling or releasing PFAS. Once you click on any of those sample results, you can get much more detailed information about the results from this particular location, like, for example, what chemicals have been detected. Here, PFAS is the first one at what levels, like 22.12 nanograms per liter. And also get a summary of the number of results we have from this location and the maximum concentration. So this is just some example of the kind of information we can display. We can show much more detail if that is needed. The last example query is about impacts. So if you want to understand where PFAS has been tested for and how that correlates with the readings that we're actually getting from those locations. We have here an example of two maps generated from the graph that show in Somerset the most samples, the most wells have been tested, like private wells. But if you're looking at the percentage of the well sample that actually came back above a certain limit, above, for example, 20 parts per trillion, like the Washington County was showed the highest percentage, even though it was a location that wasn't tested very well, which might indicate it should be tested more. So this is all made possible by a set of interconnected knowledge graph. We have 6 graphs, the PFAS graph that has the observations, and then all the kind of supplementary information about facilities and their industries from the facility registry service that EPA maintains, a spatial graph that kind of provides the background on towns and counties, as well as kind of helps facilitate the spatial integration of the different data sets. We have hydrology information about the rivers, the stream networks, and their connectivity to support tracing, for example, but also the wells and aquifers for kind of understanding potential groundwater transport, and then the crop and soil graph that adds information about different crops that are grown in certain location and the different kinds of soil that is found in those locations to kind of help look for impacts on particular crops. So this is a big team effort and wouldn't have been possible without the entire team. So thanks to everyone involved in the project, and thanks to the funders, NSF in particular, the Proto-OKN initiative, of which this is one of many connected projects, as well as USDA through the new ARS Research Center for Environmental Monitoring and Mitigation, and of course, all the input from the existing collaborators from EPA, USDA, and various state agencies. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or go to our website to find out more about the project. Thank you.